Hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today we are continuing with the read-alongs for Mordu, aka silent reading, and I'm so excited. I've been enjoying Mordu so much. Like, if MXTX is here, then Priest is like right next to her. So it just, yes, I'm so excited. Um, I don't know how many chapters, aka like pages technically we have before we're at the end of the volume, but basically we're going to be going up until where episode 8 ended, because so far it's been really close, so I think we should be able to do that. Hi, wow, so many people already here. Yay. Okay, so I'm gonna give like just a few minutes as usual, just for people to hop on if they want to, if they get the notification. um and yeah, I had something that happened today and I can't tell you guys, and I so badly want to, but I'm kind of like in two minds about whether or not I should maybe give a sneak peek tomorrow in tomorrow's live. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, we have this. As far as I remember, this is where we left off with the previous live stream. I think we should be good here. And I have my tea here with me, and then we're gonna take a 10-minute break on the hour if all goes well, and we can just quickly like grab new water and everything like that. And yeah, that's more or less it. I don't have a lot to say today. I'm like, I just want to get into the the chapters, especially because like my favorite bits is about to happen with like the car chase scene in the show was every level of spectacular, and I don't doubt that Priest is gonna make it work even in a non-visual medium. So hi. um but yeah, okay, two more minutes, I can do this. I can like hold off. I'm so bad at just waiting the 5 minutes. You would swear I have ADD or something. um Okay, halfway through. Good to know. Okay, cool. Um, but yeah, so the plan is I did put up a poll for anyone who wants to let me know their opinion. Actually, let me quickly share that while we wait. Just for anyone who maybe hasn't yet voted on the poll. But basically, I need your guys' feedback with regards to what I'm going to be doing with Urha, because the plan is to have Mordu and Volume 2 of Scum Villain be finished by the end of November, and then moving on to Urha Volume 3 for December. But because I'm going away for the weekend, well, not for the weekend, I'm going away for a while in December, I'm wondering if I should pre-record it or if I should hold off so we can do all of it live. But it will just very much depend on your guys' thoughts on the matter. Let me quickly see if I can find this. Okay, there is the poll if anyone quickly wants to jump over there and vote on it. But yeah, so that is the current plan. We shall see how it works out. I might end up doing 50-50, like doing the first two live and the next two not live, but I don't know. Episode 6 to 8 are to IA Volume 2? Really? How long is this? Because it didn't seem that short. It seems like quite a long. Okay, I can't check now, but it seems like a decently sized novel. Okay, it is 5 past. I made it. We can get started. I'm basically just gonna jump right into it. Okay. Chapter 18, Julian 12th. No, sorry, 17. My Roman numerals failed me there for a second. Wu Shuchun? The front desk attendant's smile suddenly stiffened. Lo and Joel looked at her, the feigned suggestiveness in his keen gaze developing a crack. He said heavily, "What's wrong?" The front desk attendant seemed to have frozen by his gaze. She involuntarily averted her eyes, then forced herself to calm down and gave Lo and Joe a sugary smile. "Nothing. It's like this. Our service workers here are all English names. Hearing you suddenly say her original name, I didn't quite follow. Wushichun, I think Wushichun must be Linda?" Though Lo and Joe was currently in the tiger's den, hearing this, he still couldn't resist running off at the mouth. "Your corporate culture here is pretty westernized." The front desk attendant's eyes flashed, and she pushed the picture book into Lo and Joe's hands again. "Sir, Linda isn't feeling well today. Would you like to see the others again? Or have you met her before?" Lo and Joe leaned back and didn't answer. He looked loftily down at the girl at the front desk and asked in turn, "What? You need to get a background check in order to order a service worker?" The front desk attendant hurriedly apologized in a low voice, then quickly arranged a private room for him and had someone meet him there. It may have been Lo and Joe's mistaken impression, but there seemed to be more eyes watching him now. When he'd gone, the front desk attendant let out a long breath, picked up a commercial walkie-talkie beside her and quietly said, "He's here. Like you said, in Hibiscus City room." Static came over the walkie-talkie, then a male voice. "How many with him?" Just him." The front desk attendant pursed her lips, her palm sweating, nearly unable to hold onto the big black implement. "Sorry. Next time, don't make me do this, all right? She hadn't finished speaking when an obscenity-filled voice came faintly over the walkie-talkie. "Hell, just like him. He must think he's pretty lucky. If I'd known, I'd have had someone lying in wait at the door with a sack to kill him. What the hell is the point of going to all this trouble?" Okay, that's pretty intense, and I just realized I never popped out the chat, so that is my bad. Let me quickly fix that. Sorry about that. Amidst the profanity, the wireless link was cut off from the other end. Just then, a girl wearing a white dress was shoved and prodded in by two people. There was a name tag reading Linda on her chest. This was Wu Shuchun. Wu Shuchun passed the front desk, looking helplessly at the girl sitting at it. The two of them exchanged a look, then each quickly glanced away. A few minutes after Lo and Joe had gone, Feidu didn't feel like eating anymore and walked out of the city bureau's dining hall. On walking out, he saw that Mother He had woken up, and an officer on duty was drying out his mouth trying to talk her into going to a hotel. Mother He's eyes were bulging, her face waxen. She clutched at her own clothes, neither speaking nor nodding. She understood nothing of what went on outside, so she always suspected that others wanted to trick her, always felt helpless. Living year-round, in sealed-off surroundings and lacking contact with the outside world will often produce this kind of ignorant cowardice and stupidity. That's a bit rude. For this woman, who had been sick for many years, her son had been her only support. Her only link to and shield from the whole bustling world. That is so sad. Fedu considered her through the glass for a while, thinking she seemed like a snail that had lost its shell. He didn't disturb Mother Her. He quickly left the city bureau, heading for the West Flower Market district. Hibiscus City was a private room in a corner. Lowenjo felt that there was something off as soon as he came in, because in here it didn't look as dim as in the other private rooms. His gaze swept around the room, finding some arcane mysteries in a corner. While going around the Great Fortune building earlier, Lowenjo had found that, owing to a problem with the construction, there were some unsealed windows at the building's four corners. It seemed that one of them was in this room. No one opens windows in karaoke rooms, so blackout curtains had been pasted over the wallpaper, sealing the windows from the inside. Perhaps too much time had passed. The places where the curtains were glued had come a little loose, some light from the street lamps leaking in through the crevices. Law and Joe looked around, seemingly indifferent, turned on the music and examined the ceiling as if looking for a smoke alarm. Apparently, having noticed nothing unusual, Law and Joe got out his cigarettes and lit one. I love how smart he is, oh my word. He had his lighter in one hand and very naturally cupped the flame with the other, using this gesture to furtively unfold a piece of paper hidden in his palm. The second time the front desk girl had pushed the photo album towards him, using the album as cover, she'd passed him a note. On it was a line scribbled hastily in ballpoint pen. Someone's lying in wait for you. Lowenjo was a little surprised. Of course he knew there was someone lying in wait for him. Chen Jin had phoned him to call for help. The other party would certainly anticipate that he would come. Because of this, Lu and Zhou had mentioned when Xu Chen at the door on purpose, publicly barging right in, acting experienced but not very brilliant. Oh my word. Showing himself fully alert but not alert in an entirely muddle-headed way. This way, the person behind the scenes would be sure of success and wouldn't feel cornered and get desperate. He would even try and be clever, circling around Lowenjo. I love this man. I love this man so much. He's so smart in such a different way to Feidu, sorry, my brain. Um, yeah, anyway. Lowenjo had planned to use himself to lure the enemy in, playing a hand of the Oriole walking behind. But he hadn't expected that the front desk receptionist, a complete stranger to him, would secretly help him. It seemed obvious that arranging for him to be in the Hibiscus City room, with its secret window, was another one of the girl's maneuvers for helping him. If anything went wrong, the room had a window, and he had a means of escape. Lowenjo pinched his chin, feeling boundlessly moved. He thought being good looking has some benefits after all. Oh goodness. Just then, the private room's door was opened from the outside. Lowenjo calmly put down his lighter, crushed the note in the palm of his hand, and looked up. There was a girl wearing a white dress standing at the door, her dyed hair looking a little faded. Her makeup was unusually thick. The girl smiled at him, puckering her lips, and coquettishly said, "Hello, sir, I'm Linda." Lowenjo was speechless. Lowenjo is a great lead. You just keep falling more and more in love with him the more you read. Yeah, no, the level of shameless confidence is just I don't know. It's weirdly charming in my opinion. Um, The person's nose and mouth seemed to have been flattened and then rebuilt with makeup. He really couldn't quite tell whether this was Wu Shuchun. Some attendants followed her in, bringing the drinks he'd ordered. Lorenzo nodded at the girl. Sit. Linda was devoted to service. After coming into the room, she wasn't idle. While starting a conversation with Lorenzo, she quickly laid out the drinks. Lorenzo was just thinking of tapping out his cigarette ash, and she very alertly held up an ashtray and said, "You've ordered so many drinks, handsome. There must be a lot of guests coming. Do you need me to call some more girls?" Her voice was sweet and simpering, but it inadvertently wounded. Where did I pull that from? Sounded a little nasal. Looking close, there was a layer of red over her eyes. She seemed to have just been crying. The face full of heavy makeup must have been to cover up her reddened nose and eyelids. Lorenzo paused, then gently held her chin, looking her over left and right. The action was lecherous, but his expression was very grave, as if he was trying to detect some resemblance to the girl on the identity card. After a while, seeming to have learned something, he was about to draw back his arm to speak, but Linda suddenly grabbed his wrist. Lorenzo narrowed his eyes slightly. Holding his arm, Linda put on a just convincing enough display of refusal and said in a displeased voice, "Don't, handsome. It's that time of the month. I can only drink with you." Saying so, she leaned back weakly, knocking over a bottle of alcohol on the coffee table. The bottle wobbled, about to fall, the girl's thickly painted face showing a flash of nervousness. But in that instant, Lorenzo reached firmly around her and scooped up the bottle, not spilling a drop. Linda froze. Lorenzo sighed silently. Of course he'd guessed there are some listening devices planted in the private room. If it wasn't under the coffee table, then it was at the base of the couch. Now it looked like it was under the coffee table. The girl's attempt to fake an accident and use the spilled alcohol to damage the listening device was really too obvious. Lorenzo looked at Linda and spoke with a double meaning. A girl should be a little more careful, not so clumsy. Linda thought he hadn't followed her meaning. Her not-so-subtle face at once revealed an anxious look, but Lorenzo unhurriedly put the bottle back then, as if chatting idly, said, "How long have you been here? Do you have a boyfriend?" Linda looked at him blankly. The automatic answer, "Over a year." "No." Lorenzo looked fixedly at her eyes. "You haven't considered it?" Linda shook her head. "You'll have to consider it someday." Lorenzo smiled, fingers lightly tapping on the edge of the okay, there was a mistake there. On the edge of the coffee table. He quietly asked, "Are there any boys you hang out with normally?" His hands were long and slender. Ordinarily, when he tapped on something, it was very attention-grabbing. Linda instinctively watched him and found his fingers were tapping in the same place, but going up, down, left, right, apparently forming the character chin. He knew there was a listening device in the room. Linda's, Wu Shuchin's, eyes immediately misted over. She forced back her emotions and spoke deliberately. There's one. He used to be my neighbor. People were bothering me after work, and he helped me. He's always looked after me. But what's the use? I belong to this place. Inside, he must hate me." Oh, that's a shame. "Hate you?" said Lorenzo. Wu Shuchen hadn't said disdain, she'd said hate. In a couple of sentences, she'd explained her relationship with Chen Jin, as well as the fact that she belonged to the place, and surely knew some of this place's internal affairs. maybe even those related to Chen Yun's death. Luo and Zhuo paused, then quietly said, "Is this boy still in the area?" Wu Shuchun nodded at him. "I don't have the face to see him. As long as he is safe and sound, I'll be satisfied." Luo and Zhuo relaxed a little. It seemed that Qingjin was only temporarily confined, and this girl was even more clever than he'd imagined. He leaned back lightly against the couch, then asked, "What does he do?" Wu Shuchun was accustomed to entertaining guests and in the habit of weighing words and observing expressions. Seeing his relaxed pose and hearing his words, she understood that Luo Wenzhuo had gotten her hint and was now asking her what Qingjin's purpose in coming to the great fortune building had been. Wu Shuchun forcibly restrained her impulse to look in the direction of the security camera, organized her words, then whispered, "I don't know. He must be busy. I heard there's a child in his family who left home a little while ago. He must be searching all over. He heard the child had come over here once after school. She seemed to have picked up some no-good boyfriend. A few days ago, he came to ask me about her." "A young teen went missing?" said Luo Wenzhuo. "So how come they didn't call the police?" "It's no use. No one cares." Hearing the word police, Wu Shuchun stiffened all over and stammered out these sentences. Then she seemed to remember something and added, "The name of a place was written in the child's homework notebook, a place around here. He lives far away, so he asked me about it." Jinjin had come to ask about the golden triangle lot. The security camera and the listening devices, meanwhile, were transmitting every bit of their back and forth chat to the ears of some people. They were in a certain luxurious private room on the second floor, choked with the odor of liquor and another peculiar smell. Next to them, some men and women, clearly already out of their minds, were shooting up, then writhing wildly together to get their blood flowing as fast as possible. Another peculiar smell, like, are we talking weed or are we talking aphrodisiacs? Yeah, I can't figure out. A circle of men sat on the couches, keeping an eye on Luo and Zhuo through the cameras and their headphones. Their leader was the captain of the Flower Market District's criminal investigation team. They were comparatively clear-headed. They hadn't touched the drugs and only had a little to drink. They were completely ignoring the cavern of silken webs going on behind them. One of them poked at the screen and said, "This Luo's been yammering with the woman for more than 10 minutes. Why hasn't he stopped talking nonsense yet?" The captain coldly said, "Haven't you noticed? He's been indirectly getting at what happened to that brat. Now he knows that he's not dead. He won't dare to act rashly." "How do you know that?" "The brat definitely didn't tell him anything." Captain Huang adopted a strategized manner. If Luo knew there was anything here, he wouldn't have dared to come barging in so openly. Come to think of it, the woman's a real turncoat. We'll have to think of a way to get rid of her. I'm like, I think she survived, but for some reason I can't 100% remember. Captain Huang, how do we take care of Luo? Report it to Director Wang tomorrow? Director Wang? Director Wang's getting on in years. He's gone soft. There's no telling if tomorrow he'll take along some cash to that brat's house and beg him to let it go. Even if this Luo is sensible and gets into our boat, afterwards we'll have to keep paying tribute to him. It'll never end. Better to deal with the problem once and for all. The captain gave a somber laugh. But we can't take care of him here. There's just a big case in the West District. It's too sensitive now. We'll have to be a little more subdued. You mean, leave the brat Luo for now, wait for the storm to pass, use that whelp as bait to lure him in. Captain Huang licked his lips. Ugh. On the way, if he happens by coincidence to run into a criminal and have some fun first, after all, ours is a dangerous profession. First, make sure the whelps will obey. Did you give him the shot? A person next to him quickly stood up. I did. I'll go have a look. Oh, okay. This is a lot that's happening. I mean, we knew, but still. But I do feel like everything was happening so fast and the drama and the live action that I did at some point struggle to follow the thought pattern of like what led them to make certain decisions. So now, at least to me, it feels like it makes a lot more sense why they would be like, oh, let's just um, kill him now because he's inconvenience in the long run otherwise, which I feel like makes a bit more sense, whereas in the drama they might have explained it, but I don't remember picking up on that explanation. Sorry. Captain Huang looked up, disgustedly avoided the attention of a drugged and delirious woman, slowly sipped his drink, and thought, so this is the level of the City Bureau's elite, revealing himself before he's gotten two full sentences out, and all of it on camera. It looks like every walk of life is the same. Whether you can get ahead depends entirely on who your father is. No, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm not saying that it's not the case a lot of the times, but it's not always the case. Um, Wait, where am I now? Oh, expression ruthless, he drank a mouthful and watched Law and Drew still exchanging coded signals with the streetwalker. An unspeakable cynicism rose in his heart. Just then, the person who'd gone out suddenly came rushing back in a panic. Captain, Huang, he. The captain looked up impatiently and saw his subordinate ashen-faced, looking as if he'd been struck by lightning, babbling out, Dead! Dead! The captain frowned. I don't know what to substitute that with. You dumb prick. Can't you even speak clearly? Dead what? That. The subordinate pointed to the place where Chinjin had been confined, tongue tying itself into a dead knot. Captain Huang came around swiftly, his scalp bristling. He shot to his feet, sent his glass smashing right into his subordinate's face, then roared, Dead? Who told you to touch him? The subordinate tearfully held his face, which was streaming with liquor. No, no one touched him. I just gave him a shot. Just a little dose. Just a little, Captain Huang. If you gave it to these bastards, they definitely wouldn't even notice it. Who'd have thought he'd die? I mean, if he's not used to drugs, why the hell would you dose him with the same amount of drugs that someone who's experienced with drugs would be able to handle? That makes no sense. Is he an insurance scammer? It was possible to die of a single drug overdose, but after all, how much counted as an overdose varied from person to person. There were some people who could eat a peanut or drink a mouthful of milk and die of an allergic reaction. So of course there were also people who'd die if they touched drugs at all. But those were only a few extreme cases. No one had expected that a lively, strapping young man like Chinjin would be so weak. Captain Huang's mind buzzed. Suddenly he turned and stared fiercely at Law and Zhou through the security camera. As if to himself, he said, This is Major now. We'll have to dispose of him. Oh great, we love that. Yo. those episodes were really densely packed. I also missed quite a few things. Yeah, no, that was quite intense. Okay. Chapter 19, Julian 18. After hearing these astonishing words, the circle of clear-headed people all looked at Captain Huang, eyes wide and mouths hanging open. Captain Huang paid no attention to any of them, irritably pacing a few circles around the room with his head down. Just then, someone quietly said, "But he's from the City Bureau." These people had neglected their duties, bent the law for their private ends, harbored criminals, and collected illicit money from all of this. Of course their hands weren't clean, but taking money and keeping your mouth shut was one thing. Killing someone with your own hands was another. The people in this room, for the most part, hadn't been mixed up in any concrete affairs. They'd only had to turn a blind eye, sit and wait for their hush money to come in. Meanwhile, they still went to work, still collected their wages. At most they received some grey income, occasionally went out to some recreational social engagements. None of them thought of themselves as utterly evil. Oh goodness. Moreover, having been deeply influenced by Wang Hongliang's worldview, they unanimously believed that while the deaths of a few prostitutes and delinquents didn't amount to anything, raising their hand against a member of their own profession? Now, that wasn't going too far. Oh, so that's where your threshold for common decency is. That's an interesting threshold to have. When the eyes sitting under someone's forehead are looking directly ahead or looking up, they often think that what they see are humans. Looking down, however, they often think that what they see are animals, beasts of burden. Ooh, that's a sentence. Those without power or influence, drifting in the current of events and struggling for survival, the old, the weak, the sick, the crippled, for the most part belonged to this category. Looking at animals, a human thinks they also know what it is to be comfortable and well fed, what it is to be warm and cold, but no more than that. So it's all the same if they die. After all, the idiom only says that human life is beyond value. Other lives don't hinder the affairs of heavens. Ooh, that is packed. Damn. Okay, the death of Chen Jin was an accident, a mistake. But the death of Lu Wenjur, now, that was a major event. Everyone more or less had something of this mentality. Only Captain Huang, with his bear's heart and leopard's gut, was unexpectedly distinguished. Captain Huang, that won't do. That really won't do. Another person opened his mouth. If you ask me, all right, what's his name's dead. We'll take care of the body. If Lo and Joe can't find a trace of him dead or alive, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? He knows the brat disappeared here. Captain Huang's teeth were tightly clenched, his words squeezed out from the cracks between them. Today, he'll go home empty-handed. But what about tomorrow? What about the day after that? Are you planning on doing nothing but squatting here waiting for him 24 hours a day, idiot? Can you guarantee that everyone here will keep their mouths shut tight? Business is business. Now there's been a death. Never mind him. If we tell Director Wang what happened today, even he may not be willing to protect you. The person spoke falteringly. They're our own people. If you keep going like this, my dude, you're gonna be the next one that's dead, unfortunately. Oh no. Time for beautifully delivered lessons on human nature, Gotta love that. Yep. Our own people are exactly what I'm worried about. On the night of the 20th, why did a dead man inexplicably turn up in that place? We were all there. Did any of you see? Even if it was just some asshole killing someone and dumping the body, what kind of coincidence made him throw the body there? It's like it's like marking us out on purpose. Captain Huang gave a shudder at his own words and exerted himself to swallow a mouthful of saliva. And that brat just now, popping up out of nowhere and asking about that place. Which one of you is going to tell me how he knew about it? If it hadn't been caught on the security cameras, if I hadn't been there, tomorrow you'd probably have been wearing those handcuffs in your pockets. How does a kid who delivers a black cab Sorry, how does a kid who drives a black cab get in touch with the captain of the City Bureau's criminal investigation team, huh? Do you know? No, you don't. You all understand nothing. Someone had turned off the music in the room. The ones who had taken drugs were all still muddle-headed, but the sober ones were dead silent. There must be a connection between the 520 case and what happened today. We must have them all. Staring at the security camera image, Captain Huang took a deep breath and spoke one word at a time. I'd meant to trap that brat Chin. Give him a taste of the good stuff. Get some use out of him. Forget it. Now that we've been pushed through this, we'll have to get rough and ready. What do you say? Are you guys up for it? At first, no one answered. Captain Huang sighed heavily. Fine, you're a useless bunch. Do whatever you like, then. Go and turn yourselves in. Go on. Maybe you'll get some leniency. Just then, the person who just had liquor splashed in his face opened his mouth. I was the one who gave him the shot. Captain Huang turned and gave him a sidelong look. I'll go. You gave him the shot? And who else was there who touched the brat? When he made a break for it, who knocked him out? Captain Huang indistinctly twitched the corners of his mouth. His gaze swept over all of them. Who tied him up? Who watched the door? Oh, as far as watching the door goes, I'd also like to know, since Xiao Song says he clearly only gave him a little bit, how'd he die, huh? All fair questions, technically, but I don't like this man, so... They all shook their heads one after another, saying nothing. Anyone who thinks he's got nothing to do with this can go, said Captain Huang with a slight smile. But when you've gone, be sure to watch your mouth. Everyone had a mouth, and anyone with a mouth had only to walk out the door to be a potential mole. No one wanted to acknowledge himself as a mole in front of this savage. Finally, no one answered. Be careful, Captain Wang said expressionlessly. While investigating the 520 case in the West District, Captain Luo unfortunately ran into a crazed drug addict and died in the line of duty. Luo Zhou looked at his watch. It was over 20 minutes since he'd called for outside help. The thick soundproofing material couldn't block out the music from next door, which sounded like a house being torn down. He was sitting across from a girl with a not especially dignified job, beside a table covered with alcohol worth the best part of his month's wages. Oh great! Maybe the air conditioning in the room was too cold. A chill wind blew over his neck, and from out of nowhere, Luo Zhou had a rather bad feeling. He then took up the heavy ashtray on the table and weighed it in his hand. To Wushu-chun, he said, "You're still pretty young. Isn't there something else you can do? Do you want to change jobs?" Wushu-chun shook her head. She didn't respond, only rolled up the long sleeves of her dress and showed him the track marks on her scrawny arms, as well as the bruises left behind by inexpert injection. She was very pale, making the bruises look even more ghastly. Old habits are hard to break. Oh, that to me is like one of the worst things is the way they get their hold on people. Um, on such an occasion, it seemed that to accord with social customs, he should act like a big brother, give her some words of consolation and encouragement. But some circumstances are extremely cruel. Had he been in her position, Lowenjo thought he wouldn't have made wiser choices. Saying those customary words would have been just as offensive as telling someone with terminal illness to drink more water. Could not agree more. Having nothing to say, he had to shut his mouth. Just then, the wall-smashing heavy metal next door came to the interval between two songs and briefly broke off. Lowenjo's ears, recovering the ability to hear, picked up the sound of hurried footsteps outside. He had no time to consider. He reacted subconsciously, blurting out a question to Wushu-chun. "Where's Chunjun?" Wushu-chun was stupefied by his sudden question and blurted her answer as well. In the second-floor west storage room. She'd just spoken when Lowenjo hauled her up and pushed her towards the window. "Run!" Wushu-chun backed up a few steps and twisted her ankle on her high heels. She was still a little muddled, leaning hesitantly against the wall. She said, She'd meant to say, "I'll be all right. I'm one of theirs. They won't do anything to me." But the lengthy speech hadn't yet set out when Lowenjo decisively interrupted. "I'm telling you to run. Take off your shoes and don't waste words." As he finished speaking, the door of the private room was kicked open. A few colourful young men charged in, bringing with them the thick smell of alcohol and another distinctive stench. They didn't say anything before attacking. I love how they don't specify what drug it is. They're just like, it's a distinctive stench, okay? Oh, goodness. The cases in this novel are honestly so messed up and sad. Agreed. At least from what I've seen so far. Lowenjo hefted the expensive ashtray from the table. A reflection flashed at the corner of his eye. He reached forward to block with the ashtray, metal screeching against glass, a melon knife connecting with the ashtray and slid off. Damn! Lowenjo brought the ashtray down, fiercely slamming the knife wielder's wrist and forcing his arm back. He brought up his knee into the knife wielder's underbelly. The knife wielder's stomach content nearly came up at the blow. Ugh. The melon knife slipped out of his hand, and Lowenjo smoothly snatched it up, seizing the person by his yellow hair and shoving him against the wall. He crouched down to duck another attacker, picking up a bottle of possibly fake Remy Martin cognac, and bashed the big frying pan-like bottle against the attacker's head. These attackers were all delinquents picked up from somewhere. Each one looked like a living ghost, drug users, to judge by their appearance. Lowenjo was richly experienced in street brawls. He was young and robust, exercised regularly, and added an extra egg to his jianbing every day. Therefore, he had the advantage in clearing up this crowd of drug addicts. He glanced back and saw that Wu Shichun, heeding his roared command, had taken off her shoes and escaped out the window. Then he took a deep breath and headed towards the second floor storage room. Why, after such a long spell of tranquility, had they suddenly attacked him? He didn't have time to spare to think too much. In a few steps, he leapt up to the second floor. An idea came out of nowhere to seize his chest. He thought, has something happened to Chinjun? The little delinquents he'd knocked over had banded together and came in pursuit, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. An attendant delivering drinks was frightened into a shout and glued himself to the wall. Lowenjo pushed him aside and saw the notice on the storage room, a mottled sign reading "Employees Only." Yeah, like he's gonna listen to that. Lowenjo backed up Lowenjo backed up half a step, then quickly kicked the door. The rebound from the wooden door sent pain up his calf. He had once switched legs and again stamped heavily. This time his lower leg went through the door, leaving a hole. Interesting. So he said... So one of his legs might have an old injury or something. He'd meant to go right in to have a look at him, but his legs had gone numb and held him up for a moment. In that moment, his brain, overheated from his fight and flight just now, slowly cooled as his breathing returned to normal. Lowenjo suddenly came around. This was wrong. He'd been so direct about getting the location where Chinjun was being kept out of the Wushu. There must have been someone watching the cameras then. So why hadn't they moved Chinjun? As this thought flashed by, Lowenjo backed up without even thinking. At the same time, the person lying on the floor leapt up without warning and stabbed a knife towards the side of Lowenjo's neck. Lowenjo had been fully on the alert. He instantly raised his snatched melon knife and knocked aside the person's wrist, grabbing the person's shoulder and shoving him towards the shelves to one side. Now that's a lot of shit. However, the other party was also very experienced. He drew back his shoulder to minimize the force of the blow and used the rebound of the shove to punch Lowenjo under the ribs. Lowenjo's breath caught, and the knife nearly slipped out of his hand. He narrowly dodged the other's grasp, grabbing him by the arm and spun him halfway around and slammed the foot against the back of the attacker's knees. The person shrieked and fell to his knees. By the weak light, Lowenjo could at least clearly see who he was holding. He didn't know the person's name, but he'd seen him waiting upon Wang Liang. Lowenjo forced his head up by his hair. Where's Chinjun? The person he'd kicked into a kneeling position was Captain Huang. Oh! I wasn't expecting that. He stared fixedly at Lowenjo, entirely unrepentant. Instead, he laughed quietly. Waiting for you up ahead. Lowenjo understood the implication. His pupils contracted. At the same time, there was a sound behind him, and Lowenjo instinctively half turned, raising his arm to protect his face. There was a loud and clear crash. A bottle of alcohol, and Lowenjo's left arm suffered nearly equal losses. Oh! The people waiting to take him unawares swarmed up from behind, armed with knives, bottles, cudgels, and chains, all pulsing towards him. Hard pressed, Lowenjo dodged left and right, wounds quickly blossoming all over him. Before leaving, he'd actually requested a sidearm, but until his life was hanging by a thread, he didn't dare to take it out. Because he wasn't at all sure that Wang Liang's hired thugs would be willing to behave and observe the 5 prohibitions. These people currently thought he was entirely unprepared and could be dealt with using cold steel. They also didn't want to create such a large disturbance in the middle of a crowded neighborhood, so they were willing to fight hand to hand with him. Okay, at least like that again is another thing that I was enjoying the fighting scene in that live action so much that I wasn't really bothered by the fact that they weren't using firearms, but at least this explains why they weren't. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking very loud. I will quiet down a little bit. I think I just got too invested in that. Okay. Where are we? On his own, it was better to fight hand to hand than to use guns, and moreover, the Great Fortune building was in fact close to a crowded area. The problem would get more serious if people were caught in the crossfire. Just then, a piercing police siren suddenly sounded. The crowd of people stiffened. Only Lorenzo reacted at once, pushing his hand up against the nose cartilage of the person blocking his path. Then he quickly dodged a knife and a foot and leapt out into the corridor. He knew the police siren had to be fake. The West District's roads were hard to navigate, and it hadn't been half an hour yet. The backup he called wouldn't have come this fast. Worried about the ambush, Lorenzo didn't take the stairs. He burst into a corner bathroom, pulled open the window, and jumped down. By this time, he had a gash down his back, not to mention the rest of the big and small cuts and bruises. He couldn't quite lift his left arm. The bone may have been fractured. 2 hours earlier, he'd been speculating that the killer in the 520 case would take the bait of Zhang Donglai while feeding him the cat in the dining hall, not expecting that 2 hours later he'd have been transported into an action film. What an action film it was. One's lot in life was simply as inconsistent as Luo Yi Guo. Suddenly, there was a shout from behind him. "Dagger, over here!" Luo Wenzhou looked around and saw Wu Shuchun, barefoot, desperately waving her hand at him. Luo Wenzhou's scalp bristled. "Didn't I tell you to run? What are you still doing here?" "That alarm device was me just now," said Wu Shuchun. "You don't know your way around. I'll lead you out. Did you find Chinjin?" Before Luo Wenzhou could answer, the pursuing force arrived. "There he is! Get him!" Luo Wenzhou grabbed Wu Shuchun. Following her babbling directions, they came to a short wall behind the Great Fortune building. Luckily, Wu Shuchun was light as a feather. Luo Wenzhou hefted her up onto the wall and jumped over it himself. When he landed, the left arm he'd forced into use rudely went from a dull ache to an unbearable sharp pain. I'm glad they followed up on that though, because I was just thinking, did he do that with the bad arm? And then they followed up and I'm like, thank you for acknowledging that there is consistency going on with your injuries. Sorry, I'm pedantic about things like that. Luo furrowed his brow and hissed in a breath. A cool evening breeze blew, and the blood soaking through the back of his shirt chilled him to the marrow. Under the street lamps, Wu Shuchun clearly saw his blood-stained condition and was scared out of her wits, nearly shrieking. "Which way?" said Luo Wenzhou. Shaking, Wu Shuchun pointed in the right direction. In the next instant, the man grabbed her and ran for it. "It's all right," said Luo Wenzhou, casually consoling her. "They didn't get my face." Of course that's what he would be worried about. Wu Shuchun, ... The two of them went through several little streets. After a number of confusing turns, they actually saw the open road. Luo Wenzhou finally relaxed and said to the breathless Wu Shuchun, "For now, come back with me to the bureau." Then his words came to an abrupt halt. On both sides of the road, the clamoring vendors' stalls had backed up in a flash, and the pedestrians had dodged away even more thoroughly. Several rumbling motorcycles were blocking the end of the street. They had been respectfully awaiting him for a long time. Lowendraw glanced at his watch out of the corner of his eye. Given the time, his backup should just about be here. So he heard Wushuchun behind him and smiled at the leading motorcyclist, saying glibly, "Buddy, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we chat?" But the leader didn't suffer from the villain dies by talking too much disease. That is honestly my favorite disease, even though it's so cliche and not believable at all. I live for it. Um, his icy gaze shot out from his helmet and fixed on Lowenjo, and he quickly hit the gas. The motorcycle leaping up and heading right for them. Lowenjo had no choice. He grabbed the handgun in his pocket. When he had yet to take the gun out, suddenly an engine sound even more aggressive than the motorcycle's rumbles roared up. The motorcyclist hadn't expected a brainless drag racer to appear in this place. They subconsciously panicked and dodged, immediately scattering. A sports car as colorful as a poisonous snake appeared out of thin air like a flash of lightning, executing a practiced turn and brushed against the back wheel of the moving motorcycle, sending it and its rider flying up into the air. Through the half-open window, the side of her face, half blocked by hair, appeared. The newcomer didn't look directly at Lowenjaw, only tersely said, "Get in." Sorry, I can't come down. I need to... I've been waiting for this moment. Oh, I'm fine. I don't know if you guys can tell that that was one of my favorite moments from the live action. That and the umbrella scene. Okay, I'm fine here. Okay, before we start on the next chapter, I think we should maybe pause right now and do the 10 minutes break now before we start the next chapter, and then we can move on to chapter 20. If that's okay with you guys. Let's quickly see. So, I just want to check something. They should have used Holding Out for a Year by Bonnie Tyler. That, someone needs to do a fan edit of that. Someone really needs to do a fan edit of that because that's one of my favorite songs. Um, but okay, cool. So I shall see you guys again at 10 past. I see we've made a prayer circle for more Justice in the Dark episodes while I was away. I fully agree. Please, can we have more? Can we have all of them? I would very much appreciate that. Okay, I have my water here with me. So we are good to go, I think. I'll just move that so it doesn't keep on clinking and annoying you guys. Hold on. Oops. Well done to me. Okay, we are back. I hope the sound is still okay. I really hope I didn't mess anything up. Guys, I just have to apologize. My dad is watching rugby, and so if you guys hear someone screaming, that's him. He's not being murdered, he's just watching sports. Okay, cool. Okay, where are we? Chapter 20, Julian 19. Lo and Joe was just as surprised as the hoodlums by Feidu descending from the heavens, but the situation was desperate and Captain Law wasted no time. He promptly came to a decision, first shoving Wu Shuchun into the car, then jumping into the passenger's seat himself. He hadn't sat down properly yet when the car's open windows automatically rolled shut and it started forward with a howl. With a howl, okay? Yeah, no, he's enjoying himself way too much. uh, Joe was nearly forced backwards against the back of the seat. Why do I get the sense your mood isn't very stable? Hey! Though Feidu hadn't turned to look at him, the smell of blood didn't rely on a person's line of sight. It kept floating over in a steady stream. Ooh. Oh no. The little sports car's acceleration was already dizzying, and next to him was a moving bag of blood to pile dizziness on top of dizziness. With the two combined, President Faye's brilliant moment went by, and not at all brilliantly. He was heading right for an electricity pole. Great! Oh. The pitch of Lo Windrow's voice altered, and the veins stood out at the corners of Feidu's forehead. In this extreme crisis he carefully turned the steering wheel and drove clear. Having survived disaster, the electricity pole unfortunately had yet to relax when it witnessed the car roll up and then down. President Fay had accidentally driven up onto the curb. Oh no. But I love how the electricity pole has now become a sentient thing. Lowenjo buckled his seatbelt as quickly as possible, feeling that he'd just come out of the dragon's pool and ended up in the tiger's den. Having avoided dying at the evildoers' blades, he was going to die at the hand of the suicidal driver. You're driving like a maniac, Lowenjo hollered at him. Feidu didn't even dare to breathe too deeply. As soon as he did, he would smell it. Who told you to sit in the front? I'm about to throw up. Lowenjo ... Being nauseated when faced with a handsome and elegant young man? What was the matter with him? Lowenjo, we appreciate your confidence, but now is not the time. Goodness. Cold sweat was pouring off of Feidu. Soon he simply wouldn't be able to see the road clearly. At least he couldn't maintain his airy demeanor any longer and was forced by Lowenjo into letting out a curse. Blood makes me sick. Cover it up. Lowenjo froze. He'd always thought Feidu's blood makes me sick was a joke because he clearly remembered that he hadn't had that problem when he was little. Ooh, that's an interesting piece of information. Something triggered it. I'll make a note of that. Just then, Wu Shuchun helpfully passed forward a jacket Fedu had thrown into the back seat. Lowendro shook it out and covered himself with it. I get carsick. What? Are those people crazy? Lowendro had meant to ask him, what are you doing here? But when he glanced at the rearview mirror, he found that the motorcycles were actually chasing them. Though it wasn't broad daylight now, they were still on the road in a lawful society. This was getting brazen. Captain Huang and the others hadn't expected that a whole crowd of people wouldn't be able to stop one law and draw in their own lair. But once you've shot your arrow, there's no getting it back. With things as they now stood, they could only carry on, whatever the consequences, frenzied to the end. Most likely, it really doesn't only take 3 steps for a common person who thinks of himself as ordinary um, to go from wisely coming to terms with reality to desperate criminal. Again, another interesting statement. According to reason, a first-class sports car shouldn't have been surrounded and intercepted by a crew of motorcyclists, but the actual road conditions always played a part, especially in the cramped Westphal market district, where the conditions were complicated and the roads long and full of obstacles. There were places where a rocket couldn't outrun the, especially for picking up my grandson, mobility scooter. Oh my word, what a sentence that was, and it made glorious sense. Fedu wasn't familiar with this place, and to start with, he hadn't had time to turn on the GPS, and it was dark. He could only rely on feeling, and there was a source of pollution next to him, making him feel he was barely functioning. This path really was beset with perils on all sides. Fedu's hands and feet were cold, and even his heart rate was becoming irregular. His stomach was about to revolt, contents ready to come surging up. His hands grasping the steering wheel were white. Clenching his teeth, he said, "Tell me you didn't come alone." Maybe because of the blood loss or something, Lowenjoy really was a little carsick by now. So as not to upset the unsteadily performing driver, he said without any hesitation, "I didn't come alone. I have backup. Well, we will need to reimburse you for car repairs. Oh goodness, okay." As he spoke, Wushu Chun shrieked. A motorcycle had quickly driven up. The rider slammed an iron chain against the window of Feidu's car. The window narrowly hung on without breaking, but it developed a spiderweb of cracks on the spot. Lowendraw was provoked by the sight. "The stupid car of yours is flashy but useless. If you have the money, why not get a bulletproof one?" I mean, I'm sure he wasn't expecting to have to drive to your rescue, Lowendraw. Just be grateful that he came at all. Feidu gave the rearview mirror a sideways glance and turned the steering wheel, very skillfully pressing the chain-wielding rider to the side of the road. The motorcyclist didn't react fast enough, and his front wheel twisted on the curb. He made a few desperate struggles to preserve his equilibrium, but the end still went flying along with his bike. Holding his nose, Feidu then said, "I'm not the President of the Republic. What bullets am I worried about?" Apparently a fair few at this point. Of the two of them, one must have been a crow spirit. As soon as Feidu said those words, a crack came from the car's rear window. The hair on Lowendraw's neck stood up. He was the first to react. "The bastards are shooting! Young lady, get down!" Wushu Chun didn't need to be told again. She covered her head and curled up. At the same time, another motorcycle came up alongside them, and the rider raised a hand, showing the dark and empty muzzle of a gun. Regardless of the facts, he opened fire. Luckily, there aren't so many decathlon-running bad guys in this world. The person's marksmanship looked like he was just fooling around, basically shooting blind. Though if you shot enough, there'll always be a lucky shot or two. A bullet broke through the passenger side window. Lowenjo quickly turned and blocked Feidu while forcing himself down. The bullet brushed his shoulder and hit the windshield. Oh my word, can his back just get a break? This is not the kind of back-breaking exercise that I think he was hoping for. The frightening instance made almost no impression on Feidu's thoughts or feelings. His brain, dimmed by the smell of blood, really was about to shut down. He had no time to think, and no time to feel. Amidst infinite perils, he freed one hand. Able to stand no longer, he picked up the car's air freshener and without looking, sprayed it right into Lowenjo's face. This man has no mercy, oh my goodness. Incurring an unwarranted blast of fragrance, Lowenjo was simply ready to kneel in respect for the utterly fearless President's face spirit. Can't even explain why I'm finding this as funny as I am. I'm so sorry. Oh my word. Okay, it's fine. Where am I? Oh. Feidu spotted a little street with no one in it and stepped on the gas, spinning the steering wheel as far right as it would go. He executed a turn, not giving the gun-totting motorcyclist any room to follow. Then, having completed his turn, he immediately stepped on the brakes. At the end of the little street, like a stakeout, 3 or 4 motorcycles were waiting for him. The sound of thunder came from behind. They were being attacked from front and rear, trapped in the little street. Feidu swept his gaze in a circle expressionlessly. His face was so cold it was a little frightening. He took hold of the gear shift behind the steering wheel, the engine giving out a brutal roar. The car seemed to be an enraged beast, covered in wounds and entrenching itself, preparing to launch a fatal attack at any time. Feidu quietly said, "If I run them over one by one, will that count as excessive force in self-defense?" Oh my word. Okay. Nobody in the car is having a good time. Still hilarious though. Indeed. The noise of the vehicle was too loud. Luwenjo could only see his bloodless lips moving. He didn't hear a single word clearly, but he inexplicably understood Feidu's expression. His heart skipped heavily. He instinctively grabbed Feidu's hand, holding the gear shift. Very cool, hard, full of cold intensity, like some dull metal. Just then, police sirens sounded for the second time. Red and blue flashing lights lit up a large portion of the horizon. His backup had finally arrived. About time. Using all his effort, Lo and Joel managed to unclench Feidu's hand from the gear shift. The sound of the engine slowly calmed. Inside the badly damaged car, everything was silent for a while. The reinforcements were extremely reliable. They had the scene under control as soon as they arrived, quickly snatching up the biking party and its implements. And an ambulance very considerately came after them. Lang Chao was the first to run over. She leaned on the car door. Breathlessly she said, "Chief, are you guys all right? I was so scared." Lowenjo laughed at her and hadn't had time to speak when Feidu staggered out of the car, walking to the side of the road without saying a word, and threw up. I mean, the fact that he held it in until this point is actually quite impressive, considering how bad it seemed for him. Lowenjo was discussing follow-up arrangements with Lang Chao when Director Lu, who had come over in person, stuffed him into the ambulance. He thought to himself that the old man was making a fuss over nothing. These little injuries didn't amount to anything. "Excuse me, sir, you have a gash on your back and a bullet graze. Can you just Have some respect for your body, please. After he was forcibly escorted into the ambulance, he didn't ease up but kept issuing commands, holding the ambulance's door. Chinjun may still be alive. I don't think they have any reason to kill him immediately. Oh. Go to the Great Fortune building and give it a good search. Also, go to the sub-bureau at once to pick up Ma Xiaowei. We have to get him away before Wang Hongliang gets the news. Damn it, they may already have the news by now. Alright, doctors, I'm coming, just let me finish. Oh goodness, yeah, he seems like the type. But I have to say, I kind of, in terms of storytelling and considering how much they have to squeeze into the show, I kind of like that they tied up Chinjun's death during the entire fight sequence, because it just flowed very naturally. This makes more sense on like a practical level, but I do like the way that the show shifted that discovery around a bit. Um, Comparatively speaking, his fellow patient was much better behaved. Although not a hair on Feidu's head had been hurt, when it was all over he threw up until he was half dead, vomiting himself into collapsing of dehydration. Oh, that's lovely. Tonight seemed to be a century long. For some people, each second felt like it was endlessly stretched out. The Flower Market District Sub-Bureau was silent. Xiao Haiyang, who was on duty, clutched a cell phone in his hand. His partner had fallen dead asleep. Carefully avoiding being seen, Xiao Haiyang headed towards the place where Ma Xiaowei was locked up. There was a text message on the phone. We've been caught. Notify Director Wang at once. Get rid of Ma Xiaowei ASAP. Ma Xiaowei was curled up and sleeping, having some unknown nightmare, twitching from time to time. His still childishly innocent face was so thin it had lost some of its original appearance and looked like a monkey's. It's an interesting description. Xiao Haiyang ducked inside, cautiously turned his head to look back, then reached out to grab Ma Xiaowei's shoulder. Shaken awake in the middle of the night, Ma Xiaowei was startled. He opened his mouth and was about to call out, but Xiao Haiyang covered his mouth with one hand. The boy's eyes opened wide in terror. When Luo Wenjuo's many energy... sorry. Let me try that again. When Luo Wenjuo's many injuries had been seen to at the hospital, he felt himself to be in perfect health. He could have taken on another soccer team of delinquents. He then strolled over to see Feidu and found him with an IV drip on his arm. He leaned back with his eyes closed, looking on the verge of death, as if he had been the one to get sliced up. Look, people's tolerances for situations like this is different. Don't judge. Luo Wenjuo went over and lightly kicked Feidu's foot. Other people get sick at blood. They just fall over. How come you get sick like a pregnant woman? Feidu didn't open his eyes. He only groaned. Stay away. I'm all cleaned up now, said Luo Wenjuo, flagrantly sitting down next to him. It wasn't easy getting you to sit down and eat, and now you've thrown it all up. Expressionless, Feidu said. I don't think there was anything worth regretting. Excuse you, he peeled shrimp for you. I would think that would be worth regretting. Luo Wenjuo thought about the crappy dining hall at his place of employment and decided that this was reasonable. He then asked, How did you find us? This time, Feidu played dead, not answering. That's a good question. Luo Wenjuo kicked him again. You weren't following me the whole time. What were you doing following me? Feidu's usual reaction to the sort of low-level prodding would be to coolly give him an expression that said, There you go, making trouble again, you stupid person. Then glance away. But right now he really felt too bad. His stomach had turned over several times and hurt like it was being pulled out. The impossible to get rid of smell of blood still seemed to linger at the tip of his nose. Opening his eyes, he was all Oh, opening his eyes was all it took to get dizzy, and next to him there was a menopausal asshole not giving him any peace. Oh damn. Simmering with rage, he let slip a snort. Then what did you go there for? Said Lowenjo. Leaning against the hospital's snow-white pillow, Fedu frowned deeply and mobilized all the self-restraint he had ever possessed to force himself not to swear. I went to see where He Jong-yi lived. The place where He Jong-yi had lived really wasn't far from the street behind Great Fortune Building, and the two roads in fact had some similarities. Lo and Joe waited a long time without hearing Feidu's next words. Looking at Feidu, the entire highway passing by my bedroom window right now. Um, where was I? Looking at Feidu, then suddenly saw the lights. And then you got lost, right? Hearing this, Feidu said nothing, only turned his head away and pretended he'd only heard the wind by his ears. Lo and Joe saw the hint of humiliated anger in him wonder, feeling that Feidu had revealed the trace of something of an ordinary mortal. The truth made him seem for the first time a little amiable. Lo and Joe quickly dialed back his crassness. Taking advantage of the bit of warmth and friendly human energy, he followed up. You went to see where He Jong-yi used to live because of that old auntie? Oh goodness, I'm living for this interaction because we didn't get that much of it during the actual show, obviously, because they have to censor it. So this is just great. Feidu paused for a moment, then quietly said, That place is run down and out of the way. The bad living mixed in with the good. There's a public toilet nearby, and when it's dark the whole street stinks. The surroundings are a lot worse than the other rentals in the area. Everyone who lives there is looking for somewhere cheap. The ones weighed down by having families to feed. The ones who have both aging parents and small children to take care of. The ones who have sick family members. They go out by themselves and bear hardships, saving money to give to their families. There are also some gamblers and drug addicts, so so poor they rattle, who have no choice but to live there. I do think we kind of got a scene like this at some point during the show, now that I'm thinking about it, but I don't know if it was during, like, if they still had it happen during this moment. Ho Jung-yi didn't use drugs, according to his friends, and he didn't gamble. He scrimped and saved. Lowenjo rubbed his chin. He kept daily accounts. His ledger was very detailed, and all income had a minus sign in front of it. He was saving money to settle his debt. Feidu opened his eyes, and the mysterious creditor may have told him, I'll give you the money, but you can't mention me to others. Lo Wenjo frowned. As they dredged up the circumstances of He Jong-yi's life, however, he looked at it. He didn't think he could have any connection to the drug trafficking network. The matter had not only not come clear, it was growing increasingly convoluted. He pinched the skin between his brows. Forget it. We've caught the rats anyway. When the time comes, we'll find out during questioning whether there was a connection. Feidu made a faint noise of agreement and closed his eyes again, not wanting to pay him any more attention. The two of them sat together in silence for a moment. Then Lo Wenjo suddenly rubbed his nose. Taking advantage of the friendly atmosphere of recently shared trials and tribulations, he opened his mouth and asked, There is one thing I've never understood. Back then, when your family's case, there was me, Taran, the medical examiners, as well as the old medical examiners and old criminal policemen, specially brought in to make sure our judgment wasn't mistaken. A whole crowd of people reached the same conclusion. So why am I the only one you've made life difficult for? That is an interesting question. I can't help but think it's maybe to do with the fact that he trusted Lowendraw and it felt like a personal betrayal versus all the other people he didn't trust. So it was kind of just like, oh, he expected it from them, but he didn't expect it from Lowendraw, that kind of thing. Feidu laughed mockingly. It's all right, tell the truth. Feigning politeness, Lowendraw added, I won't be angry. Feidu heard this and spoke. Indeed not being polite, he said, because that idiotic look of yours, like you think everyone else is blind and you have X-ray vision and can see through everything, is really annoying. I don't believe that's the full truth, but maybe it's just me. Lowendraw. Having heard it, he really was pretty angry. Just then, Lowendraw's phone vibrated. He looked down and his expression at once became very peculiar. The bit of anger he'd felt vanished without a trace. He held back for a while, then weakly said, So, you see... Feidu looked at him in bewilderment. My colleagues say that your car... It's very seriously damaged, and there may not be a way to repair it domestically. Oh? Said Feidu. What about it? Lowendraw took a deep breath, threw caution and shame to the wind, then in one breath said, They said the cost to repair it is really too high, about the same as buying a new one. Several years of our reward fund won't cover it. Oh my word. Would it be alright if we gave you a silk banner instead? Look, I understand your guys' position, but he kind of saved your guys' life. Is there not some way to reach a compromise that's not just a silk banner? Feidu... Lowendraw regretted it as soon as he spoke. He really wants to pick up the colleague who'd sent him the text message and shake the water out of his brain. Who knew what organ he'd been using to think up such a lousy idea? But Feidu, after staring for a moment, suddenly laughed. And it wasn't at all fake, but true, helpless laughter. Lowendraw felt awkward and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Oh my word. Sorry, I just, because of the MXTX video that I recently did, I did a lot of rereading of certain sections of all her books, and with Heaven Official's Blessing, one of the lines that Chilean constantly uses is the laugh or cry one, so I couldn't help but think of that. But before he could work through his 100 feelings mixed together, his phone rang again. This time it was Lang Chao. Lang Chao's voice was very solemn. Captain Law, we found Chinjin. He's dead. Lowendraw's relaxed expression sank, and he abruptly sat up straight. What? Also, before he was arrested, one of the suspects sent a text message to have them take care of Ma Xiaowei. Our people are hurrying over there, but I don't know whether they'll be in time. In a few words, Lang Chao had given him the two worst pieces of news. She just hung up when another call came through right after. It was Taran, who'd taken the evening off for once. Lowendraw absently said, Taran, I have some things to take care of. Can you wait a bit? Captain Law, the lawyer of Jiang Donglai, just contacted me, Taran said quickly. He said he found the suspicious necktie in Jiang Donglai's car. Ooh, okay. It's a lot to take in. Like, obviously, most of it I kind of remember, but still. Hmm. How was everything over here? Okay, it still seems fine. I hope the internet is treating us kindly tonight. Chapter 21, Julian 20. Officer Tao, just in case the test results come in and prove I was overreacting, could I ask you to keep this a secret for me? This was Attorney Liu's third phone call to Taran. The gist as before being, I would love nothing better than to go back in time half an hour and cut off the hand that phoned you. Okay, interesting. Taran sighed helplessly, feeling that this Attorney Liu really was a little neurotic. Attorney Liu then jabbered, otherwise, I'll really have no way to carry on this profession. What would you call this thing I've done? You absolutely can't tell anyone else about this. My well being and my family's are in your hands. Then why did you tell him? Like, if this is something that breaches client confidentiality and yet you don't feel strongly enough about it to just stand your ground, why tell him anyway? It seems unwise or like you're framing Zhang Longlai, but I can't quite figure out what's going on because I feel like parts of this is different from the live action, and I don't know if I'm just maybe misreading the situation. Hmm. Karan could only reassure him for the third time, all but raising his hands to heaven to swear and signing his mark. The overcautious and indecisive lawyer on the other end was finally forced to agree to bring the tie to the city bureau at once for testing. Having dealt with him, having dealt with him, Taran very apologetically turned his head and smiled at the young woman in the back seat. Sorry. He'd been disturbed by Attorney Liu in the middle of watching a movie. Oh, damn. The movie had just gotten to the part where the male and female main characters were having a falling out. He and the young lady had walked out amidst the crying, snivelling, and mutual accusations. It really wasn't very auspicious beginning for a relationship. Oh no. I really hope it works out for them because obviously we don't know that either considering where the show ended. But the young lady hadn't said anything about it. Even if she was inwardly cursing, she had the possession not to show it. She very understandingly said, If you're busy, there's no need to see me home. Driver, please stop a moment by the subway entrance up ahead. Then you can take him where he's going. Oh, that's so bad. Oh my word. Like, she's trying to be considerate, but it also just kind of reads as like, get me out of here. Um, the roots of Taran's ears turned red. He was all embarrassment. That's not very. It's fine. We also regularly get called out to work overtime on the weekends, the young lady said. And when we work overtime, it's only to make the money for our boss. You're working for public safety. And I've read about the case of the rich kid killing someone online. You have to hurry up and solve it. Stuttering a little, Taran said, It's not necessarily the rich kid. We're still not sure of the killer. I don't know if you should be saying that. Like, I'm in two minds about trusting the this woman because there was some subtle potential red flags in the final episode, in my opinion. But from his perspective, it's probably not the best to confide not so public knowledge to a person of the public. From what I remember, it is a bit different, but it still makes sense. And then, okay, cool. As they spoke, the taxi had already come to the subway entrance. The driver, all smiles, stopped the car and waited for the young lady to wave Taran goodbye. Before leaving, the young lady remembered something and turned back to say to him, "It's very nice to be able to meet an old classmate when I'm away from home, even if the way the two of us met was a little awkward." If there had been a hole in the ground, Taran definitely would have jumped in without a backward glance. Oh, Taran! This far from home, what were the chances of ending up on a blind date with your senior middle school classmates? And then, what were the chances that the senior middle school classmate would just happen to be the person you had a crush on back then? I forgot about that detail. Of course, there was nothing worth celebrating about here. Even if he'd managed to get a date with Audrey Hepburn, at this moment he'd still have to throw her aside and go work overtime. The cruel reality, oh no. Oh. When he had seen the girl go into the subway station, his critically obstructed intellect at last returned to its regular path. Deputy Captain Tao shook his head and forced the porridge in his head to turn back into normal brains and once more focus on the case. Looking on from the sidelines, the taxi driver issued a conclusion. "Young man, you have hope." For now. Sorry, I don't know why I'm struggling right now. Taran laughed bitterly. "Driver, turn up ahead, go to the city bureau." When it came to watching the fun, the middle-aged to elderly driver didn't distinguish between big and small matters. He was very interested in both emotional disputes between men and women and the enriched kid killing people cases. He really wanted to corner Taran and have a nice chat. At this point, Taran began to regret that he turned down his two friends' suggestions of borrowing their cars. To make the chatterbox next to him close his mouth, he had to pretend to be nearly asleep, put on his headphones, and play a random app with sound to stop up his ears. The audiobook on the phone flowed into his ears amidst the soothing background music. "And what will be left of me," answered Julian coyly, "if I despise myself?" This was a very niche audiobook platform. There weren't many bestsellers on it. For the most part, it was long in the tooth masterpieces, always broadcasting hypnotic prose, and only customers who presented themselves as reading leaders could request items to be broadcast. A reading leader had to submit a lengthy original essay analyzing the merits of the work, and then be selected by the editor. Only then would the platform broadcast the chosen audiobook, and when the reading was complete, would also share the reading leader's commentary. Taran didn't listen very attentively. He only used the music playing in the background to block out the noises as he arranged his train of thoughts. The taxi quickly drove into a side road and was about to reach the city bureau. Taran was about to turn off the audiobook when he heard the concluding statement. "Well, have you played the famous French author Stendhal's The Red and Black for you to this point? Next, we'll share the commentary of the reading leader whose ID is the reciter." The ID seemed to be a sudden bolt of lightning, instantly striking Taran where he was. Friday evening ought to have been pleasant and relaxed, a whole city full of people welcoming the weekend, but everyone at the city bureau was either working overtime or on the road hurrying back to work overtime. The reality of it all, oh my goodness. After receiving Taran and Lang Chao's phone calls, Law and Jaw couldn't sit still in the hospital anymore. His ideas just happened to coincide with Fei Du's. Oh my word, sorry. I can't deal like any small crumb of a moment, and I get so excited. Um, where was I? Though President Fay didn't have anything to do, his main issues were that the public hospital had too many people and the conditions were too poor. The two of them were for once of one mind, but their actions diverged. Fadu quickly called his assistant and had her bring over the car, while Lo and Joe shamelessly hitched a ride. Ah, damn, I thought they were gonna go together. It was already nearly 10. Lang Chao sent Lo and Joe a message on WeChat reporting the latest developments. He didn't speak for a good while. After a long time, he finally opened his mouth and spoke without preamble. The medical examiner's preliminary determination is that Chinjin died of a single drug overdose. Having heard Lo and Joe's unilliterate chats at the hospital, Feidu more or less understood the circumstances in which his dear car had been scrapped. He knew who Chinjin was. There was no smell of blood next to him. The temperature in the car was comfortable, and Feidu had just eaten the midnight snack brought over by his assistant. He firmly stopped the car at a crossroads to wait for the red light, taking this time to drink a few mouthfuls of banana milk to fill the gaps. The banana milk made him very even-tempered. He answered, "That sounds a little strange. It doesn't seem very civilized." Hearing the word civilized, Lowendraw shot him a look. "Oh, okay. Sorry. He hitched a ride with Peisu. Why did Feidu? Why did that take me so long to realize?" Oh my word. You're all of us, don't worry, okay. I feel very validated, thank you. um, Hearing the word civilized, Lowendraw shot him a look. "I don't dare to have such high expectation of criminals." Feidu said, "However bad a person is, he still wouldn't be willing to take just any desperate risk. For example, those people who wanted to wipe you out and finally turned to shooting up the street, that was because they had already exposed themselves in front of you. If you got away, they were done for. They only became frenzied because they were afraid of that outcome. There is causality there. They wouldn't evolve for no reason. True lunatics find it very hard to stay submerged in society for long." Hmm. I completely agree with him on that one, but we shall see. On this point, great minds thought alike. Wu Chun had confirmed that Chinjin was safe, and if the girl hadn't been lying, then it proved that at least as far as she had witnessed, the sub-bureau's captain and the others hadn't intended to kill him. Moreover, if they wanted to kill Chinjin in the first place, they never would have permitted Lo and Jo to talk so much nonsense with Wu Chunjun. But Chinjin had died of a drug overdose, which didn't sound like an accidental death. Yeah, it sounds like sabotage. The banana milk made him very even-tempered. Baby, actual baby behavior. uh, They may have been the ones to inject drugs, Feidu said unhurriedly, although it stains the understanding that people who have regular contact with drugs wouldn't manage to control the dose and slip up and kill someone. If I were suspected of harboring a drug trafficking ring and a stranger barged in and blindly started asking sensitive questions, I certainly wouldn't kill him without careful consideration. That is true. I mean, I personally wouldn't kill him with drugs, and just because that seems too directly connected and could easily tie it back to me, but that's just my thought. Um, Hearing his tone, which sounded like he was discussing the weather, Lowendra's scalp went numb. But at the same time, he still asked, and then what? Step 1, control him. Suss out just how much he knows, how deep he's gotten, and whether there's anyone behind him prompting him. Then use drugs, force, threats, and other such means to chip away at his willpower. Once I understand that the victim has only started his contact with you and isn't altogether your informer, that he doesn't dare to trust you entirely, and moreover comes for a simple background and has no close connections, then I move on to step 2. Fedu continued his banana milk scented speech. Step 2. Use a very small dose of drugs to force him to develop an addiction. And while he's in a confused state, repeatedly insulate the idea that it was you who sold them out. That sounds unfortunately quite plausible. Brainwash him, make him believe that you're wallowing in the same muck as these people. This way, he'll easily become filled with despair and come to believe there's no such thing as a so-called justice. And for someone like him, the only means of survival is learning to compromise. It's so sad how accurate that is. Lowenjo looked at him for a while, then commented, "That's really sick," agreed. Fedu was unconcerned. He continued, Step 3. When he's already addicted, let him taste some benefits. Let him know we aren't so scary, that we're really humanitarians. That will settle it. Establishing 2 serious constraints on his mentality and physiology. Afterwards, this person will be mine to use. When you and your people come in full force to sweep him up, I only need to tell him that our 2 sides have just a little conflict over splitting the profits unevenly and are in mutual struggle right now. Carrying resentment towards you, he'll become a plant in your organization. Perhaps it was because the atmosphere between the 2 of them had just eased, and perhaps it was because the scent of banana milk suffused at the inside of the car made it impossible to be serious. For the first time, on hearing the unique discourse of his, Lowenjaw didn't erupt. He was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "If you decide to break the law one day, we really may have a lot of trouble." So you acknowledge that he isn't necessarily actually that kind of a person. Just because you can figure out how those kinds of people's minds work. Fedu made no comment, and next heard Lowenjaw say, "But you're just saying that, and you're only saying it to me. You haven't put it into practice, and you haven't filled the world with killing without a trace training programs. So my colleagues and I can occasionally have a little break from work and go on dates. Therefore, I should thank you on behalf of the organization, Fedu, dot dot dot." I have so many thoughts going in my head right now, cause like part of me is thinking about what's the guy that's technically working for Huang I can't remember his full name. But for the sub bureau, the one with the that has the glasses um in the live action, I can't help but wonder if he's as like nice as I thought he was. Like if he isn't gonna become the plant. Because there's some small things that he does that make me a bit weary, but then I like him so much that I kind of just want him to be, a best boy kind of character. Not that I'm asking for spoilers or anything like that. But yeah, I do wonder about him. And then there was something here that Felu said that really got me thinking. What was it? Oh, no, it was just more the sentiment behind his things, where I couldn't help but think that usually if someone is that good at understanding the way that bad people behave if they aren't themselves um, quite bad, it's because they've been personally affected by a very bad person before and they've had to read the signs in order to learn to survive. He's an interesting character for sure. I can't remember what his name is, but yeah, him. Um, how could how come this reaction wasn't the same as usual? Lowen Joe nodded to himself and very kindly said, "We should give you an extra silk banner. Is there anything else? Give us a consult." Fedu thereupon shut his mouth tightly and didn't utter so much as a punctuation mark all the way to Yan City's city bureau. At the city bureau's gates, Lowenjo had just stepped out of the car when the police car drove up and parked next to him. Before it had come to a full stop, Meng Chao ran over. "Chief, Ma Xiaowei is gone." "Don't shout." The wound on Lowenjo's back had only just scabbed over. He was still somewhat immobilized. He used one hand to get out his cigarettes and put one in his mouth, then unhurriedly said, "It's a good thing he's gone." Lang Chao's unusually large eyes widened two sizes as she stared at Lowenjo. She opened her mouth and had yet to speak when her gaze suddenly went past Lowenjo and fell on a place not far behind him. That's. Lowenjo accordingly turned his head and saw that a cowering human figure had appeared across the street, sticking out his head in the direction of City Bureau. Another person came over and led him across the street. Ma Xiaowei in the sub-bureau's crooked-legged little glasses. Thank you, now I get to figure out Shao Hai Yang. There we go, that's his name. Had finally swapped out his broken glasses. The rather stiff square frames made him look a few years older. He led Ma Xiaowei across the street and in front of Luo Wenzhou. "Captain Luo?" Luo Wenzhou didn't seem at all surprised to see him. He nodded genially. "You're here. Do come in." There wasn't a bit of weekend atmosphere inside the city bureau. Those performing the autopsy, those examining the tie, those questioning the witnesses and interrogating the prisoners. The criminal investigation team and the forensics department were so busy they were all over the place. Mother He, put up temporarily in the duty room, couldn't avoid being alarmed by this. At the least sign of a disturbance, she anxiously stuck her head out to look. When Ma Xiaowei and the others walked in, they saw Mother He hesitating in the corridor. She saw Luo and Zhuo, then transferred her doubtful gaze onto Ma Xiaowei. "This is He Zhongli's mother," Luo and Zhuo said to Ma Xiaowei. Ma Xiaowei's already listless steps paused. He looked at her in terror. The frail woman and the haggard teenager looked at each other helplessly. After a while, perhaps because the teenager's appearance had made her think of her son, Mother He tentatively asked Ma Xiaowei, Do you know my son?" Ma Xiaowei immediately backed up half a step. "Okay, I have to stop it here because it's 4 past 11 p.m. for me. And I went to bed at like 1 last night, so I need to try and get to bed a little bit earlier today. Um, but yeah, that is the end of today's live stream. I really enjoyed it, and I think we're making really good progress as well. So we shall see how many more live streams we need before we finish up with this volume. But I loved this entire like section of it with the fighting and the small moments with Feidu and Luo and Zhuo. Just yes, I love that. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and otherwise I'll see you in tomorrow's one or next week's one. Bye.